The gunners, concealed on the hillside, saw what looked like a direct hit on the bridge from a British-built Hunter. It flew over at 400 feet, dodging the ineffective fire of tribesmen more used to simple muskets than machine guns with a kick. But after attacking the bridge for 3 days in a row, the Iraqi jets failed to destroy it. Hamilton's bridge, built 30 years ago, stood firm despite its battle scars, and the highway which it carries over the Rwanda's river remained open to the Kurdish troops. The Hunter you've just seen apparently got away unscathed, but the Kurds do claim to have brought down planes with small arms fire. Any marksman skillful enough to do so gets a £20 bounty and a new gun. As evidence of one hit, the Kurds brought forward this auxiliary fuel tank, but the pilot could have ditched it to gain speed for a getaway. At first, they thought it was some strange sort of bomb. A check on its serial number showed it was part of a British Hunter jet supplied to Iraq less than 3 years ago. Other, more positive evidence of a kill: the wreckage of an Aleutian 28 brought down by a 20mm machine gun in one of the last sorties of the war. The crew of 5 tried to bail out, but were killed when the plane hit a rocky ridge. Leading the Kurdish warriors in their fight is a man who spent 12 years in Russia after the war, but without becoming a communist. He's General Mullah Mustafa Barzani, who's 63, father of 8 sons. Until the peace talks, there was a price on his head of £300,000. General Barzani is never far away from the battlefront, and it's he who's taken the leading part in negotiations with the Baghdad government. In an interview, he talked about the war.
100,000 Peshmergas could continue the struggle if only we had enough arms. No Iraqi government can last if the struggle continues. We will accept aid from anyone. So far, we haven't attacked the oil installations because of our friendly feelings towards the Britons who control them. But if they don't help us, we will explode the installations.
Recruiting posters put the Iraqi government case that the Kurds are a minority group committing treason against a legally constituted government. They describe the Kurds as a threat to national unity. General Barzani says that over 12,000 Kurds have been killed in the last 5 years, 10,000 of them civilians. Wounded troops are taken to the forward hospital, where a queue of casualties are always waiting for treatment. In the cramped surgery, Dr. Abdul Hamkit deals single-handed with casualties, working mostly at night and snatching rest when he can in the day. The tradition amongst the Peshmergas is that the badly wounded shoot themselves rather than survive maimed. Drugs and medical supplies are scarce, and most arrive through the Red Cross or communist sources, since the Baghdad government cut the roads north. Life in the villages, despite the war, goes on much as it has for centuries. Most Kurds are small farmers. Their only contact with the 20th century, the hostile jets for which a watch is kept around the clock. The villagers are friendly and welcome all guests, except Iraqis and hunger. Since the war began, farming has been disrupted and crops ruined by napalm bombs. Wheat is scarce, tea, sugar and rice are luxuries for which have to be imported by way of Persia. And the tobacco exports, which paid for them, have been cut off. Today the factories are on the wrong side of the front line. But despite shortages, the Kurds display an almost British concern in keeping their pets well fed. Outside each village, a close watch is kept for the approach of troops or planes. The Kurds claim that over 270 Kurdish villages have suffered air attacks. The lookout on the rocky pinnacle has overtones of Kipling and the northwest frontier, but the Kurds are not, in fact, without modern aids to warfare. In a valley well hidden from patrolling planes lies the underground nerve center of the Kurdish High Command and a radio link with the battle areas. But more often than not, the Kurds depend on runners to carry important messages to headquarters. Bazani, a man of action himself, prefers to let the members of his high command handle the paper war. Among the 15 members of the high command, Father Paul Baden, a 76-year-old Catholic priest working alongside Muslims in the interests of the small Christian community. Others include high-ranking army officers, engineers, and the secretary of the Kurdish Democratic Party. Together, they act virtually as a cabinet under Bazani's overall leadership. It's the High Command who handle all matters of administration, supply, and military strategy. It's they who give the Peshmergas their marching orders and make sure that they're properly trained and equipped. At the High Command's camp, about 40 Iraqi prisoners of war have been put to work. The Kurds claim to have taken about 800 prisoners in all, but many of them are sent back to the Iraqis, minus their arms and ammunition, because the Kurds can't afford the guards or the food to keep them. Those who do stay are allowed to broadcast messages to their families on Radio Free Kurdistan. 3 prisoners were asked if they'd been able to inform their families where they were. The first man said that he hadn't been able to contact them. The second said the same. The third, a Kurd who went over to the Iraqi side, said his family knew where he was. He bitterly regretted his treachery and would never repeat the mistake. He wanted to stay with the Kurds. But his 2 fellow prisoners, both Iraqi-born, wanted nothing more than to get home to their families. They were afraid that their families were very unlikely to have heard the broadcasts that they were allowed to make and would assume that they'd been killed in the fighting. One of the more hazardous jobs in the war effort is done by the Kurdish Ordnance Corps. They collect unexploded shells left over from Iraqi attacks and saw them up. The TNT inside is poured out to be used again against the Iraqis. The TNT is collected into sacks and taken to the ammunition factory, a kind of thieves' kitchen inside a mountain cave. Inside, welding equipment fashions grenades and mines out of any material that comes to hand. Grenades may be made out of sawn-off lengths of metal piping and a mine sealed by a pottery saucer. They're painted green, a lucky color, and a jubilant poster shows how they get the Iraqis on the run.